Hanbit heads to Hunter Rickner's shed to take an archery test that should have been impossible for a beginner. Even Yanwu gets nervous, because the rule is simple but brutal. Score 200 points in 30 shots using weak gear. When Hanbit fires his first arrow, he misses completely, making it look like he only came here to embarrass himself. But then the mood changes fast. His next shots start landing, one after another, and before anyone can understand what is happening, Hanbit begins hitting bullseyes like a veteran. What looked like a hopeless challenge suddenly turns into another moment where Hanbit proves he is far more dangerous than he seems. Well, the reason is, our hero, Kang Hanbit, survives a war against the monsters of the world. After a hard-earned battle and defeating them, he finally gives up the ghost, but then he's shown to have regressed, possessed, and reincarnated a total of 55 times. All this was caused by the goddess who summoned him to the world and kept on sending him back, no matter how gruesome he died. This time around, she praises him for lasting longer than the other times. When Hanbit hears her, he gets pissed, but the insufferable goddess simply asks him if she should have him reincarnated, since it's been a while, but Hanbit snaps at her while gritting his teeth, noting that she's the cause of his problems. He tries remembering when he got to the dimension, but can't because it's been so long. Back then, the goddess informed him to find Erfurt and save the world, and ever since, he's died a couple of times, only for her to respawn him in several ways and face nearly the same fate. Despite all his efforts, in the end, he couldn't find a clue about what Erfurt actually was. Frustrated, Hanbit yells at the goddess, informing her that he can't continue anymore and she should find the Erfurt herself. As usual, she tells him it's impossible for her because doing so will result in the world's destruction. In response, he tells her he'd go insane before that, but she doesn't get him, since she has always ensured his body and mind function properly each time he shows up. At this point, Hanbit realizes that there's no point in reasoning with her, but even though he admits that she's right about fixing him, the memories of the agonizing pain he felt each time he died always vividly resurfaced and gnawed at his mind, and the accumulated trauma has pushed him far beyond his breaking point. As usual, she asks him if they shouldn't start preparing for the next cycle and which part he would choose, but he yells at her, insisting he's done. That's when she reveals she was kidding and then praises him for doing his best in the role he was assigned. She then informs him that he has earned the right to return to his original world, and he gets shocked because he had failed all through the cycles to save the world. There, she reveals that the process was more important than the result, so he shouldn't bother himself with it. Without wasting time, she casts a spell on him to send him back to his original world, but Hanbit, who isn't ready, tries to get her to attend to a lot of questions bothering him. But as always, the insufferable goddess doesn't listen, and she tells him that all he has accumulated shall manifest as a tremendous power. Hanbit, who is extremely annoyed at her, yells at her, but then she tells him that she'll expect great things from him in his original world, and with that, he is sent back. 18 months after returning to Korea, Hanbit wakes up one morning and notes how his original life returns slowly. Seeing that his mom had left for work, Hanbit stared at his military uniform, which he got after completing his enrollment in the Korean army. He's pissed because the thing went by due to the number of times he did something similar in the other dimension over and over again. Although it was his sixth duty, Hanbit complains about how adjusting to modern life is so hard, and he blames the goddess. Now that he has finally landed an internship, he wonders how long he'll last, so he notes that he'll return to school to file for a work-related leave of absence. Still, life feels uncertain to him, and as he dawdles in his problems, he receives a text from Yanwu, who asks him to join him for drinking. Hanbit candidly rejects the idea, so his friend makes fun of him, calling him a scaredy cat. Hanbit lets it slide because Yanwu helped him during his military service, which was right after he got thrown back to Korea. He looks at his message again and realizes that Yanwu was actually joking with him, and he wants to give him a discharge gift. Hanbit gets serious, and he asks for details and ends up meeting with him. They meet at a cafe, and Yanwu, who is his senior in military service, although 5 years younger, checks him out. Without wasting time, Hanbit curiously asks about the gift, but Yanwu tells him to slow down. The punk doesn't waste any time and prepares to leave, so Yanwu cuts to the chase by showing him a card, which he claims is from the game called Record Project. He calls it a membership card that he can use to get the gear for him to play it at home. He stretches forth the card, calling it his gift, and tells Hanbit to take it, and it costs about $500. However, Hanbit rejects it and informs Yanwu that he just recently found a job, so he'll be too busy to play games. He then reminds Yanwu about his family situation and how he might get a second job. Once Yanwu learns that Hanbit's priority is making money, he makes fun of him for not having any form of romance in his soul. This pisses Hanbit, who grabs Yanwu's hair while asking if romance and gaming can put food on the table. Yanwu then continues by revealing that Hanbit can earn money as huge as 75 grand from playing the Record Project, and immediately, Hanbit hears this. He takes his seat and listens raptly. Yanwu then informs him of Team Zero, the company behind Record Project, and how the will of the company's founder, Michael Welton, says that all the rights to the company will be handed over to the person who first clears the game. Yanwu reveals how popular the game has already gotten and how the value of the in-game currency has skyrocketed. He shows Hanbit the trends and how not just walkthroughs are for sale, but even leading conglomerates have invested to form their strategic teams in the game. Hanbit thinks about it, and knowing who Michael Welton is, he agrees to take the offer. Surprised and happy, Yanwu asks him if they should head to the event zone right away. Moments later, upon arriving at the venue, Hanbit sees how crowded the place is and he complains, but Yanwu tells him they don't have it as bad as in Europe and the United States. Yanwu then grabs him by the collar and drags him out to where they can get the guidebook for newbies. There, he tells Hanbit how the game isn't newbie-friendly, which is why an adventurer wrote a guidebook specifically for beginners, and it's thanks to the guidebook that he hasn't quit. After hearing him out, Hanbit looks through the book's content and is frustrated at what he finds in it. Yanwu wonders if something is wrong, but just then the goddess whispers to Hanbit, reminding him that she expects great things from him, and Hanbit wonders why the quest to find Erfurt is in the book. Remembering that the goddess meant she was going to watch over him, he wondered what she meant by that, but spotting the Erfurt quest in the book, he realized that she never had any intention of letting him go from the start. Hanbit gets pissed and crumples the book, and Yanwu, who is concerned, asks him why he's so serious. Hanbit waves him off and asks him if he knows anything about Team Zero. Yanwu tells him about Michael Welton's youngest daughter, the current representative of the company, and says that's all he knows about them because the company's members are all kept secret. Hanbit finds it suspicious and concludes there is a connection with the goddess. He then wonders why it has to be in a game. After all, the world he was sent to was very real, whereby he felt disgusted killing his first victim, and also when he lost his life. Now he wonders if it's right for him to step back into a place, but if he does, he can finally put an end to his pain. He then asks Yanwu how long it'll take the gear to arrive, and Yanwu tells him in about 2 hours. He grabs Hanbit's phone and sets up the procedure. He also insists they pay for the crumpled guidebook. With that out of the way, they leave the store, and Yanwu bids Hanbit farewell. A few hours later, the package arrives, and Hanbit calls it an expensive console. He goes through the equipment before locking his door, noting it'll take a while before his mom comes home. Right after, he wears the console and immerses himself in the game world. Immediately, the game scans him, and he notes that his avatar feels closer to a real body than he expected. He tries to edit his appearance, but then realizes that the settings window isn't popping up, so he calls the game flimsy, despite it being popular, and tries to reboot the game again. To his surprise, it fails and informs him that his character already exists. As the game glitches, Hanbit curses the goddess because he knows it's her fault, and by the time he appears in the port city Edlin, he notes it's been a long time. Hanbit then checks out himself at a nearby mirror, and he's shocked to retain the same appearance as his last regression. He wonders if this was a silent message from the goddess telling him to start over. Suddenly, he gets a message from Loafer asking him to add him as a friend, and when he clicks on Loafer's profile, Yanwu's game avatar appears, and Hanbit can sense he's the one due to his luxurious outfit. Yanwu then asks him why he customized himself to look like his real-life appearance, but Hanbit replies out of embarrassment that it just turned out like that. Still, Yanwu asks about his nickname, and Hanbit is surprised since he doesn't know about it, but with Yanwu's guidance, he learns he's Black Dragon. Irked out, he grabs Yanwu and demands how to change it, but Yanwu laughs at him, before telling him that it's impossible. This pisses Hanbit off, so he takes it out on his friend, but Yanwu tells him to check his notifications. When Hanbit does as told, he gets a pop-up which asks him if he'd like his gameplay to be broadcast on Yanwu's stream. Yanwu explains the terms to him and talks about splitting the bread 50-50. Upon hearing that he can run away with 60% if they perform well, Hanbit accepts the deal, and Yanwu immediately goes to life. There he introduces Hanbit to his viewers, saying he'll be joining him henceforth and promises them they'll get to see many interesting things. The fans start roasting Hanbit for his poor alias choice, and he gets offended, but then Yanwu calms him down and reminds him of their goal. While they pick on Hanbit, Yanwu shows him the ropes by directing him to check the skill recommendations, which scan the player and recommend about 3 skills that suit them. The skills range from magic to swordsmanship, and Hanbit wonders if the techniques he learned during his 55 cycles are implemented in the record project as skills. With that, he clicks his profile, curious to see his skill, and a bright light shines from it, leaving not only Yanwu stunned but also the viewers. The viewers immediately drop negative comments regarding Hanbit's skill choice, with some reporting his account. Surprised, Yanwu asks him how he attained them, and Hanbit tells him he doesn't know. Not only that, but he also isn't sure of what he's talking about and how the system works. Among the many catalogs listed, Hanbit selects magic, and this pisses off the viewers who feel like he's playing the game for the fun of it. Confused, he asks Yanwu if magic is trash due to their response, but Yanwu tells him that the most important thing in that game is proficiency, and compared to other skills, it's incredibly hard to build up proficiency for magic. Despite a star icon appearing once the skill is maxed out, one can't check their progress. The viewers agree with Yanwu, and some vote their comments, believing Hanbit will cry and rage quit after using the same spell for 2 months. Seeing the comments, Hanbit remembers when something similar happened and how magic was difficult for him to learn back in the other dimension, which was why who he learned it from is very important. So he asks Yanwu if there's a master he'll get to learn the magic skill from, and Yanwu is surprised. The comment starts buzzing with hate, but Yanwu calms them down and explains to him that after successful completion of quests, the game rewards players with books that let them learn skills right away. As for the NPCs, they have high-level AI but not high enough to actually teach skills. Upon learning about skill books, Hanbit says things have gotten convenient, unlike during one of his cycles when he had a master who trained him to the bone. Reflectively, Hanbit tells them to head to the general store, and it surprises Yanwu about how he knows about the place. Yanwu then tells him that they can just get fire attribute magic from Yulio, the general merchant. Upon hearing his name, Hanbit calls Yulio an ugly scammer after learning Yanwu wants them to get a magic book from the merchant. Hanbit slanders the poor merchant, whom the fans find brutal with his words. Not only that, Hanbit tells Yanwu that he'd rather save 1,001 than him if both were drowning. Still, Yanwu says they should head to Yulio's shop for the fire attribute magic, but Hanbit doesn't think that way. Instead, he glides through his screen and sees a picture of Asvel, his former magic teacher, so he asks Yanwu if he knows her. Yanwu immediately suspects Hanbit wants her because of her good looks, but Hanbit insists that she's top-notch. As patient as ever, Yanwu explains how Asvel is just a quest NPC who commits fraud and theft and eventually gets locked up, never to be seen again. He explains that because of her pretty character design, the company received tons of requests to add a route for her, but things didn't end up like they wanted. Hanbit, as adamant as ever, cuts him off and says he should prove him wrong, so he insists they go to Asvel. The viewers get pissed at him for being so stubborn, and when he notices it, he decides to follow their route by going to Yulio like they want. After watching him switch up, they decide to make a bet to have him dance if he's wrong about Yulio, and he silently agrees. As he bids Yanwu to follow him, Yanwu gets confused due to the path he's taking, but Hanbit calls it a shortcut. Shocked that Hanbit knows the route, he asks him if it's his first time, but Hanbit calls it a gut feeling. A few moments later, they arrive at Yulio's shop, and upon seeing him, Hanbit is infuriated as he recalls how Yulio got him locked up in one of his past cycles. Curious, he asks Yanwu the level of NPC interaction, and Yanwu tells him that the NPCs are so free that, based on the player's interactions with them, it can affect their game progression. From the viewers, Hanbit also learns of how players got their quests completely blocked and had to delete their characters. Pissed, Hanbit barges into the store and walks straight to Yulio. Then he grabs him by the collar before asking him if he's pulling the same stunt. Then he calls him an irredeemable piece of trash. Yanwu and the rest of the chats are shocked when they see Hanbit, and they notify Yanwu that someone else is coming up. Yulio wonders why Hanbit would accuse him. After all, he came to buy a spell book, so he begs Hanbit to let him go. Hanbit does as told, and Yulio tells him that the last spell book got sold, but he can introduce him to another shop if he does him a favor. He explains that a thief broke into his shop while he was dozing off, and he suspects it was his rival merchant, Asvel. He asks Hanbit if he'll help him catch the thief, and immediately, the quest pops up. He'll get rewarded if he does the quest, and the chat believes Hanbit has lost since a scammer can't pull out a reward. Hanbit, on the other hand, notes that Asvel is his true magic mentor and benefactor, and just by training under her in his first playthrough, got framed and sent to prison, and it was all carried out by Yulio, who bribed the soldiers and fabricated evidence against him. Curious, Hanbit asks him not just for the spellbook as a reward, but what will happen to the thief. There, Yanwu reveals that the thief doesn't appear again after going to prison. Realizing that Asvel will be held accountable for Yulio's crimes, Hanbit walks off, not minding what Yulio was saying, and he goes straight to the man's shelves. There, he pours some items without listening to Yanwu, and after searching through them, he brings out a purse and dangles it in front of Yulio, asking if this was what he claimed he was robbed of. Immediately, the system gives him 500 gold for apprehending the scammer. This surprises the viewers as they learn Yulio is a fraud, and hearing him admit to it solidifies their view. Yulio then insists that Hanbit leave his shop, but Hanbit stomps his face with his boot, sending him crashing. The viewers who bet on Hanbit losing start complaining, while the neutral ones flaunt their "I told you so" comments. Suddenly, a guard sees them and charges into the store demanding what's going on, and Hanbit concludes he's done for. Moments later, Yulio gets arrested and locked up. While watching the events unfold, Hanbit notes that it's quite different from the past cycles, because back then he had to break through the bribed guards and hand Yulio over to someone trustworthy. The system then pops up a message informing him that he has completed the previous quest, and now he'll get a new one when he moves to Asvel's general store. While the viewers argue amongst themselves, Hanbit feels as if the flow of the game is as if it were waiting for such an occurrence, so he wonders if he should consider it a coincidence. Impressed, Yanwu asks him how he knew, and Hanbit, Knowing that Yanwu won't believe him, decides to make something up by lying vaguely about how he read something similar in a fantasy novel long ago, and he wonders if the person in charge of the game was the novel author. Yanwu buys it and calls Hanbit a geek, and Hanbit is glad that he talked about fantasy novels throughout his military service. Suddenly someone donated 10,000 won, and Yanwu sucks up to them, thanking them and glaring at Hanbit. The sudden change in energy among the fans surprises Hanbit, who decided to leave it entirely to Yanwu, while he does what he's good at. Curious, Hanbit asks Yanwu if Asvel's shop will appear if they head in a particular direction, but he tells him he didn't know about Asvel being connected to Yulio, and the discovery will be a heated topic in the community. They head towards a store, and Hanbit notes that everyone will forget about Yulio over time. He considers Asvel a temperamental bossy lady who, due to Yulio in the past cycle, was jailed and burned to death, so he considers her a precious and painful memory. Currently, he knocks on her door and goes straight up to her, who asks who he is, and says she hasn't seen him before. She asks him if he came looking for her, knowing who she is, and he looks down at her, calling her a newbie, before asking if it's her first time. There, he admits that he showed up because he wants to learn magic from her. She leaves her desk and asks him what he means by that, and calls him a funny one, so she then asks him why she should teach a new person like him, but then he notes that it's going according to plan. After all, she'll refuse, but thanks to what happened earlier, he has a solution. Meanwhile, the chat rages with finished goons calling her mommy, and just then, Asvel observes Hanbit and asks to confirm if he's a black dragon. He confirms her guess and reveals that Yulio was framing her as a thief. Upon hearing him, she sighs and calls him a piece of trash, and she thanks him for saving her from trouble. He shakes her hand, and they conclude that his face was already a giveaway. She then checks around, knowing he's looking for a magic book, but he tells her to wait and asks to confirm if she's looking for a cure. Surprised, she asks him how he knows about it, and he tells her that the information is on her desk. There, he suggests helping her to find a cure, and it pisses her off, so she asks him if he knows a lot about medicine, and he replies positively. She senses his confidence and asks him for the name of the disease that causes blue pupils, accompanied by dizziness and vomiting. Hanbit admits that he doesn't know the name, and he confirms from her reaction about the number of times he's been fooled by so-called experts when he was trying to find a cure, and they ended up getting scammed and their time wasted. Now, thanks to repeating the experience multiple times, he surprises her by revealing more symptoms and how potions don't work. Shocked, Asvel clings onto him, asking if he knows the disease, and he tells her it doesn't have a name, but she knows how to cure it. Shocked that he knows the cure, she begs him to help her and promises to reward him properly. He assures her that he'll get the medicine, and a quest immediately pops up, telling him to cure her mother's ailment. He's to find the medicine around Edlin, and he'll be rewarded not only with 2,000 gold in Asvel's Fireball magic book, but he'll get a heroic rank and 500 experience points. The chat immediately freaks out after learning that Hanbit will be guaranteed a heroic rank if he fulfills the request, and they are triggered to boot up the game. Even Yanwu is shocked that Hanbit can get such a title that early, so he explains to the noob how rankings work. Yanwu tells Hanbit to think of ranking as the tier level and grade as the rarity, so even if the magic books are of the same rank, the performance of the spell learned thereof differs based on rarity. Learning about how things worked in the game, Hanbit wonders if they made it that way because it's a game. Yanwu wonders if they just need to find the medicine by plucking it. But Hanbit is lost in thought as he concludes he'll have to use the spellbook's performance to give her a feel for how good the hero grade is. While Yanwu asks him where to go next, Hanbit turns around and suddenly jilts, and out of concern, Yanwu asks him what's wrong. That's when Hanbit hears his mom's voice, so he responds and then logs out of the game, leaving Yanwu all alone. The chat laughed after learning that the great black dragon had to log out abruptly to attend to his mom. Back in his room, Hanbit quickly rushes to the door and greets his mom, informing her that he was busy. She gets the wrong idea and starts whooping him, believing he was getting rough in the sheets. After all, he wasn't the kind of person to lock his door. Thankfully, he explains himself by pointing to the expensive gear Yanwu had bought him as a discharge gift from the military and how he was logged into the game. She takes a glance at it and talks about it casually, which shocks him, so he learns that she's aware of it since it's all over the news. She then tells him not to spend too much time on it, and he tells her that he'll only play it a little. After all, he has gotten a job as an intern. Surprised to hear this, Hanbit's old lady whoops him for not telling her about it, so when she asks him why, he says she would have stopped him if she knew. The strict woman slams her palm on his face and says it's very obvious after all. No parent will want their child to start hunting for a job right after military service discharge. He grabs his nose and tells her that his graduation semester is right away when he returns to school, and he'll need to get a job right after. She pauses after listening to him, then tells him not to miss breakfast, since the company is quite far from home. She tells him she's aware he didn't eat any that day, but then he tells her Yanwu treated him to a chocolate parfait, but that's no food for the old lady, so she yells at him. With that, she wishes him good luck before going to her room. Hanbit looks at the time to discover it has gone, and as he notes that it'll be his first day as an intern, he decides it's best he sleeps early. but he feels bad for Yanwoo, who's currently been stormed by a lot of comments. Kim Jae-ha, an employee of the RP Dedicated Department's small-scale workshop, scrolls through the server and sees the uproar on the server regarding Asvel's quest and the hero ranking, but he doesn't believe it. He then searches Yanwoo's account and notes that all he gets are monster names. From the comments so far, he learns Yanwoo is with a guy named Black Dragon, and he calls Black Dragon an edgy kid who got shut down by his mom. Quick, Jae-ha decides to see things for himself. Meanwhile, in the game, Yanwoo sees a lot of comments, and they are new from people asking him about Hanbit. Some of them wonder if he's a middle schooler, but Yanwoo clarifies that Hanbit is done with service, but he's very devoted to his mom. He checks the viewers and realizes how much his views have skyrocketed. Surprised to learn that his platform has made it to the mainstream service, Yanwoo places a call to Hanbit and begs him to pick up the phone. But unfortunately, he receives a message from Hanbit who apologizes for ghosting him. Hanbit also explained that he had to go to work, but he would leave a hint on how to get the medicine. Yanwoo then tells his fans the situation and riles them up before showing them that Hanbit had revealed that the cure for Asvel's quest can be obtained from bomb slimes, and if they clear it before he gets back, he'll give them more special info, so they should keep an eye out. Meanwhile, Hanbit shows up in corporate wear right in front of a building, and then he walks in shyly to inform them that he'll be working with them. To his surprise, the place is all rowdy, and the employees are up and about trying to sort things out. One of them spots him and instructs Minho to take Hanbit to the conference room, so Minho shakes him and asks him to follow him. He then tells Hanbit that he'll show him the contracts later, but for the time being, he should clear the whiteboard. Hanbit does as told, but just then, a boss walks in, so Minho introduces Hanbit, who earnestly vows to work hard and learn much during his internship. But to his surprise, the man simply walks off while telling him just to do as he's told, and if he's done cleaning, he should head out. Moments after Hanbit leaves the room, he sulks while noting that he can already see the future of the company, which means he'll have to learn what he can on his own for the rest of the time there. The bright side is that it's better than rolling around in the other dimension. Yanwoo, on the other hand, smiles happily after realizing that no one has cleared the mini-quest Hanbit had set up for them. But then Hanbit shows up and roasts the viewers for lacking imagination. He tells them they need to be more creative. This pisses them off, and they nearly lose their tempers. But then he grabs the recorder and reveals he'll show them how it's done. Firstly, they head to the main gate of the city walls, and this surprises Yanwoo, who asks again if Hanbit truly is a newbie. As usual, Hanbit says it's what he got from reading lots of fantasy novels. He looks back at Yanwoo and says that he just found out that this game gives more freedom than others. Right ahead, they hear a commotion and wonder why a lot of people are gathered there. Then Yanwoo concludes they are the people who showed up after seeing the post in the community. Suddenly, they hear a shout of someone announcing the arrival of a vanguard, so they look back and see a party of different members approaching the venue. Surprised to see the party, Yanwoo tells Hanbit that the word about what he has found had spread further than he thought. Confused, Hanbit asks him what a vanguard is, so Yanwoo explains that the top 10,000 rankers are called the Vanguard, and they are graded based on points from their level, proficiency, story progress, and the like. And out of 300 million players worldwide, there are only about 10,000 rankers, with 500 of them from Korea. This has Hanbit confused, as most of them haven't learned magic, even though some of them dress like mages. Yanwoo then explains that most of them skip it to prioritize growth because of the proficiency requirements, and also many people dress up as mages because it seems cool. Hanbit takes a glance at a special bow and notes that he remembers it because it's of the Golden Bird, a bow that was made by a skilled artisan. Surprised that such a fancy group hasn't cleared Asvel quest, Hanbit asks Yanwoo about it, but then learns that most of the Vanguard belong to conglomerates. And many try to make it to such a level so they can get full support from companies, since they'll get rich that way without having to clear the game. Suddenly, a girl taps Hanbit, and after confirming he's a black dragon, she asks him when he plans to show them how to clear the quest, so he tells them he'll start soon. Someone else then shows up and yells it's a complete lie, but then the lady insists they give Hanbit the chance. The people argue a lot about their experiences with dealing with scammers, and as they continue their rampage, Hanbit tells Yanwoo that they should head towards the sea. Yanwoo gets confused since the bomb slimes are on the opposite side, but then Hanbit tells him that he needs a fishing rod to make the medicine. Yanwoo and the chat get more confused, and they wonder where Hanbit is going with his behavior. Suddenly, someone donates a grant, and in that instant, the price of fish in the waters off Edland skyrockets. So the folks realize that there are a lot of scalpers monitoring Hanbit in real time and adjusting the currency value. Watching them act in that particular manner makes Hanbit snicker because they do not have a clue. Curious, Yanwoo asks Hanbit if what they need is in the sea, but Hanbit acts nonchalant, and it pisses Yanwoo off. Frustrated, Yanwoo clings to his boots and hopes Hanbit isn't lying. If not, he'll quit streaming. Hanbit quickly intervenes and tells Yanwoo to trust him, so he asks him to lend him 70 gold coins. Everyone is stunned by his decision, and they wonder if he set Yanwoo up. When they get to the banks, Hanbit sees more people than ever, and he asks Yanwu about it, but seeing how Yanwu is acting up, he promises to pay him back. Yanwu then says it's because he doesn't have an idea of what Hanbit plans to do with a fishing rod. After scouting the area, Hanbit spots an old man named Eldrick fishing, so he goes to meet him and asks the man to sell his fishing rod. The geezer asks if he wants a hot rod, but then Hanbit curses the chase by saying he knows the man can hear him, so he offers to pay him 50 grand worth of gold coins for it. To the viewer's surprise, the geezer demands a 100 grand, but then Hanbit prices it to 60 grand. He realizes that the geezer hasn't changed, and they continue bidding till Hanbit joins him while fishing and reduces his price. Eldrick doesn't filter his words, and as they interact, Hanbit notes that it reminds him of the old days. The man eventually gives in, and Hanbit buys it for 60 grand. The viewers roast him for his shady attitude, but then a win is a win. A while later, Hanbit arrives at the venue with the fishing rod, and as the viewers wonder what he plans to do with it, Buttonwoo goofs around by asking Hanbit to get into role-playing. Newbie in the chat suddenly asks what kind of mob is a bomb slime, so Yanwu tells him that they are slimes that are incredibly sensitive, and if touched, they blow up. Even if one attacks them from a distance, they still blow up. Worst of all, they detonate if someone makes an eye contact with them, and they don't drop anything when they explode. The noob wonders how Hanbit plans to do something useful with a fishing rod against the bomb slimes, and the entire chat believes only Hanbit knows the answer. Right from above, Hanbit sees a bomb slime below, and he says he's at the perfect height. He takes out the fishing rod, noting how the sensitivity is a bit different from reality. There, he adjusts it. But just as he's about to get serious, Yanwu informs them that, thanks to a viewer, there are people following them. Hanbit looks unbothered and notes that he already knew, after all, they were being followed from a distance ever since they left the city, and it's not just Ken contamped several groups. Quickly, he asks Yanwu to give him control of the screen setting, and when handed over, he apologizes to everyone before turning off the live feed, saying they'll have a brief moment of technical difficulties. Back in the military, Yanwu always loved reading fantasy books, but no one in his unit shared his hobby. He was left to gobble up pages over and over until the pages wore out. Over time, Hanbit showed up, and to Yanwu's surprise, he knew and had read the novel, and it was thanks to him that Yanwu learned of extra details he had never caught, and this made him feel as if Hanbit had been to that world. Time passed, and by the time Yanwu saw the game ad, he immediately knew that if he played it with Hanbit, it would be unbelievably fun. Presently, Yanwu informs Hanbit that only his screen is being broadcast, and Hanbit agrees, while noting that they need to pretend as if they are focused on the slimes. Yanwu then speaks to the viewers to follow his channel, but they yell at him to move his head away. Hanbit understands how frustrating it is for them, and notes how anxious they are about how soon the competitors will catch up. He notes the intense battle of wits won't last much longer, and before long, party stalking them steps up. Upon seeing them, Hanbit shares his screen and waves at his fans before launching the rod's hook, which he notes is so sharp that the bomb slimes can't react to it. Then he presses a button on the rod which shoots our spikes from the hook's tip, allowing him to control the explosion, and the slime caught in the blast has its core intact. Shocked, having witnessed Hanbit's knowledge firsthand, the party hurriedly falls back, but just then a mob of slimes rains down on them, so they run for their lives. Unfortunately, they get caught in the wind of the explosion and are completely taken out. Yanwu is shocked by the impact and is surprised at how efficiently Hanbit dealt with the stream snipers. With them out of the way, he gets back to business, and they spot a slime of a different color. Hanbit uses the fishing rod on it and grabs it, but it doesn't explode like the rest. He throws it inside a bag and tells them that he has successfully secured the materials. They are mostly shocked as to why the slime didn't explode like the rest of them, but Hanbit informs them that the current slime is a dud, which only happens when a group of bomb slimes is wiped out all at once. The leftover slimes immediately mutate into dud slimes. Curious, Yanwu asks if they'll be able to clear the quest if he follows Hanbit's method, and Hanbit tells them that he is showing them all how to do it so they can clear it too. He grins like a maniac while noting that controlling the explosion won't be easy for them. From there, they go straight to Asvel's shop. Meanwhile, Jae-ha from the small to medium gaming studio, who nearly got wiped out from the bomb slimes, note that Hanbit is no ordinary newbie, and they believe he's backed by a major corporation, one completely massive and different from the one he works at. What he wonders is why Hanbit would choose to team up with a bottom streamer like Yanwu, but he then wonders maybe Hanbit's company's Vanguard discovered something massive and they're using Hanbit to divert the player base's attention. With that bothering him, Jae-ha notes that he needs to clear Asvel's quest, and doing so alone will be enough to meet his monthly quota, but unfortunately, Jae-ha wouldn't succeed that day. Later that evening, Hanbit and Yanwu arrive at Asvel's place, and Asvel is weirded out by the dud slime he brought. Worst of all, he prepares it on a dish and calls it medicine for her mom, so she refuses to accept it. Based on her reaction, Hanbit asks Yanwu if it's really bad, and Asvel makes up her mind to compensate him for taking care of Yulio, then she asks him to leave. Hanbit then riles her up by saying she isn't desperate, and this gets her mad, so she yells at him. He immediately stuffs her mouth with the cooked sludge and forces her to swallow it. Yeonwoo looks more cooked than shocked at what Hanbit just did, and the chats raid his expression like a book. Asvel tries to process what just happened, and she immediately rushes inside to puke. Hanbit, upon seeing her reaction, calls the medicine effective, but then Yeonwoo states the obvious. Within minutes, she grabs Hanbit by the collar and yells at him, asking him why he did that. Then she calls him a freak, but he then asks her if something like a seed came out, and he calls it wow, saying it's what is causing the illnesses. He reveals that it's the true identity of the illness that she and her mother were suffering from. She gets confused, but he insists that what she threw up was the cause of their illness. He smirks at her while revealing that he was aware that she too had been sick, and he had noticed it the first time he saw her. He had inwardly noted that Asvel must have suffered in silence because she didn't want to worry her sick mother, and she was afraid Yulio and the likes would use her condition as a weakness. She asks him how he knew, and he tells her that what she ingested is a parasitic seed that grows in the far south, which attaches itself to one's stomach and grows. He concludes that she got into such a situation from eating ingredients brought from the south, and bomb slime mucus is the only way to detach it, which was why they want a dud slime since they do not explode, unlike the general counterpart. Since the explosive trait is removed, once induced, it causes the host to throw up, hence removing the parasite seed that caused the illness. Hanbit then reveals that it isn't a disease she suffered from, so he hands her the plate and tells her to hurry to see her mother. He looks at her compassionately, noting that even though they are in a game world, she hasn't changed inwardly, and calls her a foolish girl who always worries more about others' pain than her own. She could be rough with words, but she always took his side, so now he wants her to be happy. Fast forward to her offering her mom, causing her to throw up huge seeds. Asvel gets mad at the people who scammed her all this time, and she smiles while vowing not to let them get away with it. The chat is surprised to see it, and even Hanbit says it's been a while since he saw her smile. She thanks him while wiping her tears, and everyone watching the stream vouches for her as their top girl, but Hanbit reminds them that they didn't do anything. She says it's thanks to him that she and her mom are alive, so she brings out the spell book and hands it over to him. He thanks her, but she says he's saying her line. Yeonwoo starts wishing to touch it, but Hanbit reminds him it's his, then he suggests they leave for their main quest. To their surprise, Asvel calls them back, saying there's more to give them. She hands them a huge reward, and the system informs Hanbit that the first clear reward is being issued. When Hanbit gets handed the 2,000 gold coins, the system doubles it, and his stats point increases from 3 to 5. He gets an extra experience point bonus, levels up, and Asvel's book upgrades from heroic status to a unique class. While Hanbit wishes for Asvel's happiness, he suddenly gets rewarded with a first clear notification. Upon seeing that, the entire chat is flooded with messages. Yeonwoo is as surprised as Hanbit, who didn't expect the book to change its grade. He then asks Hanbit to say something to the viewers, and when he looks at the screen, they see how fast the chat is moving that it becomes totally unreadable. As Yeonwoo worries about how to handle the situation, Asvel hands Hanbit a paper page, and he gets a pop-up that not only calls him her savior, but also grants him a point multiplier from her. She tells him it's an introduction to the blacksmith shop, where he can check out items if he needs anything. She believes they don't have normal weapons, and their gears got wrecked while trying to catch the slime. She then thanks him once more and asks him to come and see her anytime if he needs help. The finished people in the chats behave as if she's speaking to them, so some of them boot up the game to see if they'll get a chance to cop her. With that, the duo leaves her store, and they wonder what to do next. Yeonwoo shows Hanbit the map and explains that there's no fixed route in the game, so they can go wherever they want. Normally, everyone who logs into the game starts at Edlin, but then they are free to explore anywhere, and this may be disadvantageous, because doing so without knowing where one is going could get one stuck in a high-level area. Still curious, Yeonwoo asks Hanbit why he's wearing his normal face in the game rather than customizing it, and this makes Hanbit wonder if he can tell him it's because of the goddess. Yeonwoo brags about his character design, saying he spent 5 hours customizing it, and this has the chat worried about him. Yeonwoo also warns Hanbit not to fall for female characters because male people might choose to have them as their characters. Currently, Hanbit thinks of where to go next, but suddenly he is notified that a certain viewer has donated 50,000 won while insisting he wants to see an angrier Asvel. Yeonwoo immediately snaps into action and thanks the donor, but it doesn't stop there. One donates 10 grand and another donates 30 grand. The donation keeps pouring in, and Yeonwoo does his best as a good host by thanking them. He then shows Hanbit the viewer count, who is surprised to see that they have over 8,000 people watching them. Hanbit shyly thanks them for their donation while the chat asks Yeonwoo to show them his 100 grand reaction. While Hanbit calculates the total donation, noting how his share is about 250 grand, he sees Yeonwoo shamelessly doing the famous 02 dance, scarring the viewers. Hanbit recounts only clearing Asvel's quest, and he has already earned that much, so he wonders how much he'll make if things progress smoothly, and this makes him realize that he can get to repay his mom. Back then, when the goddess who snatched him showed him the flow of time in the real world to pressure him, Hanbit learned that he had gone missing and his mom had poured all she had to find him, which is why he vows to do everything he can to make her happy. Yeonwoo then asks Hanbit to use the grimoire, informing him that the viewers are waiting, so Hanbit touches it, and the grimoire disappears before his fireball unique grade skill pops up, showing him that he has a fire element spell that incinerates everything with a massive explosion. Upon reading the skill, Hanbit says it's too easy, unlike when he struggles so much with it. Yeonwoo then talks to him, telling him to tell the fans how amazing absorbing such a skill felt. At first, Hanbit says he didn't feel anything, but when he realizes he has to act for the chat, he lies about the information pouring into his head. Meanwhile, he finds it strange, noting that he definitely learned the skill, and he wonders why what he learned in the other world is showing up in the game, and this makes him realize what the game meant by existing character at the start. Dying from curiosity, Yeonwoo tells Hanbit to use the skill in front of the viewers, and he should aim at the rock not too far off. Hanbit recollects how the spell works, so he follows the process and a huge fire erupts from his hand and flies straight to the rock with immense speed. Once it touches it, it disintegrates it into bits, and Yeonwoo is amazed by the skill level. As Hanbit goads over the spell, noting that it isn't bad, he suddenly feels the goddess's eyes peering down at him and stretching her hand as if she wants to whisk him away. By the time he regains his senses, a pop-up notification tells him how he has experienced an increase in all his skills and the effects are amplified with experience level. Also, he has now unlocked the spirit skill. Mentally traumatized, Hanbit grits his teeth while cursing the goddess under his breath. The intense shock he got from realizing the goddess was watching makes Hanbit lose his composure, and Yeonwoo, who is worried, asks him if he's alright. Quickly, Hanbit corrects himself while telling Yeonwoo not to worry. After all, he isn't sure Yeonwoo will believe his goddess's tale. He then gives an excuse for how the spell took a toll on his body because it was his first time firing such a high-ranking spell, so he asks Yeonwoo to show him a normal spell. Shocked by Hanbit's request, Yeonwoo confirms he wants to see it, then he gives him a heads up, warning him not to laugh when he sees it. With that out of the way, Yeonwoo fires the spell, and Hanbit sees a little flame that goes out right in front of him. He complains to Hanbit, who in reality finds their skill so disappointing, but after being reminded of the differences in trait, he doesn't push the matter forward. Instead, he tells Yeonwoo that he's doing things wrong for imagining the spell. It's something new that just clicks out of reading a book. He blames Yulio for leading them astray from the basics, before then going into geek mode to explain how magic works. With that, he concludes by informing Yeonwoo that he doesn't plan to continue using his unique trait magic despite it being high class as his main skill, because the major goal for using magic is its convenience. Absolutely stunned, Yeonwoo reminds Hanbit that he made his character the previous day, and this makes the chat make fun of Hanbit for being a hardcore geek. Pissed, he nearly takes it out on the chat and vows not to drop them any info further on, but thanks to another viewer who donates a huge amount of cash, Hanbit reflects on his temper and apologizes to them. They then ask him where he plans to go next, so he heads to a remote place, and Yeonwoo asks him if he doesn't want to take on the main story. Hanbit then reveals that he has come there to rack up points before partaking in the main story. So he opens the door, and when they enter the shed, Yeonwoo mutters how creeped out he is, but Hanbit goes straight to talk to the shed owner, an archery NPC named Hunter Rickner. Rickner asks Hanbit what he's here for, and Hanbit tells him he came to learn archery. Seeing how confident Hanbit is, Rickner asks him if he has some grit, and the chat, who is familiar with Rickner, calls him a grit-obsessed NPC. Hearing Hanbit declare that he has lots of grit and skill, Rickner says he talks big, so he decides to test him out. Right after saying that, a quest pops up demanding that Hanbit pass Rickner's test for some rewards. Shortly afterwards, Hanbit is taken outside to an archery spot and drops the rules to Hanbit, saying Hanbit must score 200 points out of 30 shots, with the bullseye being 10 points. Worried, Yeonwoo advises Hanbit to first put some of his stats into agility, but Hanbit refuses and tells him he's got it. He fires the first shot and completely misses the target board, and this makes Yeonwoo remind him once more. Still, Hanbit reassures him that he has gotten the hang of it. The next target he fires hits the 7-point mark, and it surprises Yeonwoo, but what comes right after is a total shock. All of the remaining shots strike the bullseye, hence adding up to a total of 287 points, and this shows Hanbit achieving something impossible with just a level 2 gear. Meanwhile, in town, a lady flipping gold coins whines about being bored and wants something better to do aside from snuggling coins from geezers. Suddenly, she spots Hanbit and Yeonwoo walking through the gate, and she wonders what kind of fools came looking for her. A few moments ago, right after securing the archery skill and some gold coin rewards, Yeonwoo looked happier than Hanbit, who got the skill, so Hanbit asked him why, and this made Yeonwoo praise him and ask him if he did archery in school. Yeonwoo gets so excited and extremely money-driven that he reveals setting up a betting pool just in case, and they hit the ultimate underdog jackpot because no one thought Hanbit would be good at archery. He snickers, noting how cool it would be to pull off such stunts once in a while, and the chat literally reminds him that they are still there. Curious, Yeonwoo asks where they are headed, and Hanbit says to learn swordsmanship skills, but he wants to secure the swiftness skill. This surprised Yeonwoo and some chat members, who wondered how the skill was related to swordsmanship, and he joined some of them to call it trash. Still, Hanbit dashes somewhere and orders Yeonwoo to stop bickering and follow him. When they walk into the town, Yeonwoo shows Hanbit an NPC named Leah, and informs him that the reason people avoided the swiftness skill was because Leah's quest is way too hard compared to how good the skill is, so he asks Hanbit once more if he's sure he can do it, and Hanbit wordlessly walks up to Leah before introducing himself and saying he has shown up to learn what she does best. She looks at him, saying she likes his attitude, but then instantly speed blitzes past them, snuggling his coins and grinning like a witch, while informing them that they are too slow. She announces their tuition fee, saying it's upfront and 5,000 gold. Surprised to see Hanbit not reacting, she asks him why, but then he replies that since she has already collected the tuition fee, it's best she teaches him the skill already. Inwardly, he notes that she has stolen way more gold from him during his 55 cycles in the other dimension compared to the current game. Judging Hanbit by his laid-back attitude, Leah tells him she doesn't like him, and in that instant, she informs him that their class is starting, and as for his assignment, he is to try to catch her. In that instant, she moves so fast that she leaves after images wherever she goes. Hanbit suddenly gets a quest, informing him to catch her within the time limit, and if done, he'll get her swiftness skill book, stat points, and experience points. From the chats, Hanbit realizes that there is no way he can catch Leah when she takes off like that, and she only lets one complete the quest after taking 2,500 gold and making them wait through 5 3-hour time limits totaling 15 hours. Meanwhile, one can't do any other quest, and the timer pauses if they log out. Hanbit then declares that they have to catch her, but then Yeonwoo tells them that it's impossible since no one has ever caught Leah directly. Hanbit thinks about it and notes that if he can't catch her himself, he just needs to call someone who can. They head straight to Asvel's store, and Hanbit asks her to help him catch Leah. Surprised by the request, despite being glad he came back, Asvel asks him how he knew she and Leah are family, but he lies to her about how it's famous around the street hideouts. Left with no choice, she agrees and walks out of the door steaming, and this surprises Yeonwoo and the chat to learn that she and Leah are sisters. Hanbit lies once more about spotting graffiti about where Leah was, so some chat members played back the video and couldn't find what he was talking about. At this point, some assume he has an eagle's vision and conclude it's why he's good with a bow. With that, he interacts with the chat, telling them to always pay attention to their surroundings and how sending Asvel to prison won't grant them the choice to have her catch Leah. Yeonwoo then beckons to him to come along, so they all head for the street hideouts. Meanwhile, Leah plays with a cat and concludes that Hanbit must have given up on her, but to her surprise, Asvel shows up right behind her and looks quite mad at her. Within moments, they have her surrounded and Leah snaps, calling it cheating for involving Asvel. Hanbit then reminds her that she was the one who said he should use any means necessary, so he went with Asvel since he has a history with her. Pissed, Asvel calls her over before scolding the daylights out of her and warns her to stop or else she'll eventually mess with a scumbag like Yuliyo. Leah immediately apologizes, but that isn't enough for Asvel, who asks her to come to the shop once they are done, and she warns her she'll be in trouble if she gets sidetracked. Leah agrees, and then hands Hanbit her Swift book, noting that she hasn't met anyone like him, and because a promise is a promise, he gets to keep it. Immediately, the system pops up a quest complete notification, informing Hanbit that since he cleared the task in a short amount of time, the reward has been upgraded to its maximum, hence he gets triple the stat points and 500 times the experience points. The chat, upon realizing Hanbit just got another unique skill, can't hide their jealousy. Leah, on the other hand, hurriedly takes off and hopes she doesn't run into Hanbit again. Moments later, Yeonwoo, who is out of breath, eventually catches up to Hanbit, and he learns he's late to the party. Hanbit then shows off the book, saying it's a unique class, and Yeonwoo is out of words. At this point, even his viewers cannot keep up with him, and they wonder how they can get to know about developments before him, and who owns the stream. While holding the book, Hanbit informs Yeonwoo that it's time for him to acquire the swordsmanship skill. Hanbit absorbs the book, and he still finds it strange, despite it being the third one. Curious, Yeonwoo asks him on behalf of the viewers why he learned the swiftness skill, and Hanbit makes an analogy of how if they were to have a race, he would slightly have an edge over Yeonwoo thanks to the swiftness skill. Still, Yeonwoo notes that the unique grade didn't make a huge difference, but to Hanbit, who has died over 50 times, he knows why he went for the skill. Yeonwoo then happily takes out his sword and announces that he's Hanbit's senior in the field. After all, he's ranked number 2 in swordsmanship, and it's an advanced grade. Upon hearing his skill, the chat roasts him non-stop, and Hanbit tells him word for word. Hanbit then notes that most players, including Yeonwoo, are following a similar route, which is caused by the guidebook, and because no one interacted with Asvel due to Yuliyo, the scammer. This causes a chain of reactions, and with the incredibly high degree of freedom, makes it impossible to know which path is the right one. Hanbit notes that with him being the first to clear Asvel and Leah's quests, the things he has experienced are hints leading to the right path. There he stands his ground and vows to clear RP his own way, and despite not knowing what the goddess is thinking, he refuses to play the puppet anymore. As Hanbit and Yanwu walk outside the town, Hanbit asks why the most sought-after swordsmanship NPC is far away, and Yanwu says it's because the person is a reclusive swordsman. They arrive at a place covered in fog, and as Yanwu sights Balder, the swordsman, he waves at him, declaring that they've come to learn swordsmanship. Balder glances at them, and Yanwu notes he's still as intimidating as ever. The swordsman then picks a wooden sword and tells Hanbit to swing the sword behind him until he tells him to stop. The swordsman, who isn't ready for long talks, tells Hanbit to begin, and some moments later, Hanbit drops his gear and holds the wooden sword, and as Yanwu watches him, he notes that the swordsmanship quest is divided into swinging and sparring. Curious, Yanwu asks how long it took the chat members to clear the swordsmanship quest, and based on their responses, it ranges between an hour and a half to less than 3 hours. They also tell him that what's important is that they shouldn't mess with Balder, because if anyone does that, they are cooked. They then talk about a clip that went viral after a player had mocked Balder, so Balder cut him in half. As Yanwu finds it odd that a skill-teaching NPC can kill players, the viewers vow to donate a huge sum of money if Hanbit finishes the training in less than 25 minutes. Yanwu immediately informs Hanbit that the total is over 800,000 won, so he encourages him to wrap it up in less than 25 minutes, and Hanbit realizes it's twice as much as the stake the viewers made during his archery training. Hanbit concentrates and notes that the most important thing in swinging the wooden sword isn't the number of times elapsed, and from the start, Balder never expected much capability from a novice swordsman. Unlike most players Balder had met in the game who felt like swords were the most standard approach, and it must have felt incredibly insulting to him, so the one thing Balder wants is a serious attitude towards the sword. Hanbit gets serious while holding the sword and glances at Balder, but as he prepares to make the first stroke, Balder stops him, and this has the viewers confused. Glad that his technique had worked, Hanbit glances at his system screen and receives a new quest. There, he is tasked to spar against Balder, and the difficulty is adjusted according to his own level and stats. Yanwu sees it and tells the chat that Hanbit has passed the first stage. As they flare up and call their bet void, one of the viewers donates 10,000 won, saying he'll double it or lose, and what Hanbit has to do is block Balder's wooden sword 2 times for success. The player then donated 100 grand, demanding that Hanbit block 4 strikes and clear the level, or else they should bungee jump off a cliff. This gets Hanbit a bit worried because there's a high chance his proficiency affects the difficulty. Yanwu gets worried when he gets roped along, but Hanbit smiles wickedly at him and holds his shoulder, and this gets him terrified. Thankfully, Hanbit promises him they won't go bungee jumping. Suddenly, a viewer adds 1 million won to the mission and says Yanwu and Hanbit have an amazing friendship. Hanbit is shocked as he realizes the total amount is almost 2 million, so he steals his resolve and prepares to fight Balder. He takes his stance, but Balder quietly gauges him before leaping at him while charging with a reversed slash, but Hanbit parries it and he's sent flying. Yanwu and the entire chat are shocked seeing how aggressive Balder is, and they are shocked that Hanbit blocked it. Balder then exhales and launches a quick draw, but Hanbit blocks it, and he shivers from the shock. He notes that his movement feels sluggish because they are inside a game, and it might be because of the gear's sync rate. But thanks to his swiftness skill, he can react in time to offset the attack. Balder then pauses and says Hanbit has a lot on his mind, and he wonders if Hanbit is relaxed or if he's acting that way because of the unexpected situation. To everyone's surprise, Hanbit talks cocky, and this pisses off the chat, and Balder, who had judged him properly, says he had misjudged him. He then makes up his mind to end things quickly, so he charges at Hanbit with a thrust attack, but Hanbit says they'll know that once they see it through to the end. Suddenly, Balder follows up with a heavy sword slash that shocks everyone, so they wonder why Balder is going all out for just a quest. Thankfully, Hanbit dodges it by a hair's breadth, thanks to his swiftness. The chat is very impressed with Hanbit's reaction, and he, the aforementioned, notes that Balder is getting impatient after all he can hold up when he should have fallen. Balder, who goes for the thrust attack, slams into Hanbit but then realizes that Hanbit has stopped it with his stick. He tells Balder that his movement has gotten wider, so Balder falls back and then charges up the stick. Seeing this, Hanbit senses an incoming dangerous attack, and in that instant they dash at each other, but when their wooden swords clash, Hanbit's sword breaks and he is sent flying backwards. As he falls, he tells the viewers that he successfully blocked Balder's hits 4 consecutive times. He calls it a successful mission and laughs, noting that it was exhausting. But then the people who stake their money on the line hope the match isn't over. But then they receive a notification informing them that the duel has ended due to the destruction of the wooden sword. Those who staked their money on Hanbit losing complain, while the others comment on how crazy the match was. When Hanbit gets up, he asks Yanwu about the mission money, and Yanwu promises to split it evenly once the stream ends. Curious, Yanwu asks Hanbit what he used to do before joining the army, and Hanbit internally notes that he went through 55 cycles of progression, possession, and reincarnation. Hanbit speaks vaguely, but Yanwu tells him the chat is guessing the list of jobs he must have done, and each of them had something while wielding a blade. One curious viewer asks Yanwu how he plans to split the money, and Yanwu reveals he wants to give everything to Hanbit. Surprised, Hanbit reminds them that they had agreed to do it 50-50, but Yanwu tells him it's fine. After all, the missions were done purely through his physical abilities. Hanbit is glad at Yanwu's kindness, and he thanks his stars. He won't go bungee jumping anymore. That's when he learns from the chat that it wasn't a real challenge. The same money donor drops 100 grand and tells Hanbit to keep using the sword from that moment so they can watch and learn, and they agree to do just that. Right after, Hanbit looks at Balder, who rests on a nearby tree, and notes that even though Balder appears calm, he seems to be suppressing his rage, and Hanbit concludes that Balder is blaming himself for having his movement read by a novice like him. Still, Hanbit approaches him and asks him if the duel is over, and Balder agrees, before telling him to wait there while he gets him something. From their small talk, Hanbit senses that Balder is clenching his teeth to keep his anger from showing, and the person who will come after him will be in big trouble. Balder then hands him the sword book, and Hanbit, upon receiving it, calls it the fourth book he's gotten. The system then pops up, revealing that according to Balder's evaluation, the rewards will be adjusted to the maximum value. He earns 3,000 gold and a training manual, rank 1. He gets another unique book, and they are surprised he's getting them on a streak. Someone even donates 10,000 won, and while everyone asks him for tutoring, Hanbit whispers to Yanwu to handle them, so he walks off. Yanwu then takes over the stream and offers to teach them swordsmanship, but they tell him to scram. Hanbit walks off to Balder and asks him for something more, then he tells Hanbit how his master moved to Edlin, so he hands him a piece of clothing, saying that if he hands it to him, then the master will at least listen to him. The napkin, which has a sword embroidered on it, falls to Hanbit, and Balder tells him that his master should be where the wind gathers. When Hanbit returns to Yanwu, he tells him that it's time for them to head back, but then sees Yanwu performing a reaction dance. Someone donates 1,000 won, while noting that a lot of people will be rushing at Balder after they leave, causing him to get overworked. When they reach town, Yanwu then asks if they'll head to Balder's master, but Hanbit tells them to stop for the day. He informs Yanwu, who is surprised that he has to go to work, and it'll be a problem if he doesn't get at least a little sleep, so he stretches and bids them farewell, saying they'll see each other the next day. Yanwu agrees and notes that they did run for a long time that day, so he wishes him good night. Before Hanbit logs out, Yanwu asks him if he'll log in immediately after work the next day, but Hanbit declines, then logs out. Now back in his room, Hanbit wakes up all sweaty and hot, so he makes up his mind to wash up and sleep. He wonders what could have caused the intense heat, but just then he gets a notification from Yanwu, who informs him he'll settle the payment right away. He makes the transfer, and Hanbit, who would have preferred he do everything at once later, nearly freaks out after realizing they made about 3 million won in just 2 days, with the actual playtime being about 10 hours. He then wonders if he should scrap work, but he remembers he made up his mind that he wants to accept reality rather than sticking to the game full time. He feels bad for the viewers, but still makes up his mind to keep the stream as a hobby. At first, he's concerned about Yanwu, who's looking after him, but then he changes his mind, believing that donations don't always explode like that. Also, his mom will be more relieved if he has a proper job. Before going to bed, he notes it would be nice to show his filial piety once in a while. The next morning, his mom yanks him off the bed, and he wonders why she did that very early, but then she corrects his notion that it isn't early. Annoyed, she points to her phone, demanding what the huge amount of money he sent her. Without giving him time to explain himself, she wonders what he must have been doing all night and hopes he isn't doing bad things. Worst of all, she strikes him on the head before giving him time to explain himself properly. At first, the old lady concludes the fastest way to earn such an amount is gambling, but then he argues against that and reminds her about Yanwu and the game he bought him, saying they raked in such an amount from streaming in the game. With that, he clarifies the air, reminding her that she knows he'd never do anything illegal. And after hearing him out, she sighs and tells him they should talk when she gets back from work. She then reminds him to hurry up and prepare for work, but thinking she doesn't believe him, Hanbit calls her back, saying he's serious, and his old lady tells him she believes him, but she's worried it might make things harder for him, just like work. As she leaves, he internally assures her that he'll ensure she doesn't carry the debt burden alone anymore, and he'll work hard to ensure she can live comfortably. At work, Hanbit notes that despite experiencing that hellhole of a dimension, he had thought the burden of real life wouldn't hold a candle to that, but unfortunately, his team leader rides him like a rodeo. The man scolds him by treating him like a flea bag, and Hanbit recalls how, as soon as he got into the office, Minho hands him a pile of complicated documents which he had nearly sorted, making it easy enough to figure out, and he had just started working on it when the team leader unexpectedly called him over. The mean boss labels Hanbit a trial version and nagged him about stuff that didn't have anything to do with his job. He then tosses his card at Hanbit, ordering him to fetch him some coffee. To clarify the air, Hanbit asks which coffee he should get him, but the sour man clicks his teeth before glaring daggers and informing Hanbit that they only drink Americanos there. He asks if Minho didn't teach him anything, so Hanbit quickly covers for Minho, noting that the team leader fully intends to chew Minho out once he shows any weakness. As Hanbit works to deliver his errand, he notes that his steps feel so heavy. By the time he returns to his desk with the coffee, he sees the team leader yelling at Minho, and Minho takes the man's nonsense with lifeless eyes, treating it like an everyday occurrence. And once Minho slowly speaks up about how he can handle the new task given to him due to his current workload, the team leader says he's gotten bold for daring to pick and choose his assignments. Immediately, the mean boss throws the documents at him and tells him that if he sends him to do something, he should do it. Upon seeing his reaction, Hanbit drops the coffee on the boss's table before joining Minho to pick up the documents. Realizing what Hanbit has done, the team leader glared at him murderously and told them they are all full of it. After organizing the document, they go back to their seats and Hanbit sees how complicated Minho's expression was and how he's staring blankly into his monitor with even more empty eyes than usual. Minho then apologizes to Hanbit for letting him witness such a pathetic sight, but Hanbit plays it off, saying their team leader is in a really foul mood. Still, Minho apologizes, saying that wasn't the only reason, and it's because the new project the team leader tossed his way is heavily focused on development, and it requires a ton of time investment in several areas. Because of the new work, he tells Hanbit beforehand that he doesn't think he can look out for him properly, and that's why he feels sorry. Hanbai T, who had looked into a bit of the documents, confirms the new project is related to RP, and after seeing how lifeless Minho looks, he informs Minho that he can assist him with the project. Later that day, after work, Hanbit meets with Yanwu, and he notices the eye bags under Yanwu's eyes, so he asks him, wondering why Yanwu looks so wrecked, and suspects he didn't sleep. Yanwu then refutes him by stating that he slept for 3 hours, so he urges them to go inside the cafe before they chat. At the coffee shop, Hanbit groans and sighs while complaining about the stressful life of being a working adult, and he tells Yanwu that he can easily fill up a whole stream's runtime just cursing out his team leader. While relaxing, he asks Yanwu what he wants to talk about, and Yanwu shows him his phone, which has a lot of companies trying to reach out to them, with one of them being Manhwa Gaming, a huge company that offers to pay them a starting bid of 100 million won. He says everyone is desperate to buy Hanbit out, and if he's to pick a company, Manhwa Gaming is the best. Suddenly, Yanwu looks at Hanbit's face and sees him furrowing at him, so he tells him to loosen up. But then Hanbit tells Yanwu to stop hiding what's on his mind and tell him straight. After all, it's super obvious whenever Yanwu is lying. Yanwu tries to hide what he feels, so Hanbit asks him if he genuinely wants him to join a large corporate team. Genuinely worried after seeing how pissed Hanbit is, Yanwu tries to talk his way out of it, but Hanbit grabs him by the hair and tells him not to try to hide his feelings. The boy cries out in pain before saying that he knows how much he's struggling financially, so he wants him to secure a good job, which is why he had thought that a starting salary of 100 million won is a fantastic condition. Hanbit thanks him for his intentions and says that he was the one who first invited him to play RP, so it makes sense to hear what he wants to do first. On hearing this, Yanwu notes that it doesn't sit well with him, and he speaks of how much freedom to explore feels lovely at first glance. But when he got his hands on it, it was difficult and progress was painfully slow. Also, he enjoys watching more than playing, which is why, to him, someone like Hanbit is the brightest star. All the fresh and captivating moments that will arise when we play together, he wants to be with him, watching it all happen, and he wants to share the exact moment with other people. For that reason, he wants to launch an MCN entirely centered around him. He plans to establish a guild that spans both reality and the game, and Hanbit sees that he's talking about what he said back in the army, and Yanwu is surprised that Hanbit still remembers. Curious, Hanbit asks him how he plans to make money, so Yanwu informs him that he plans to use a feature to upload videos that was added to the record they use for streaming, and the ad revenue is bigger than he expected. Then again, Hanbit is the most talked about user on the record, so they're featuring their videos at the top, and just by watching his videos will attract people to play the game. And from there, the number of people who want to join that journey will grow. So Yanwu asks him for his opinion about growing the channel more seriously, and Hanbit wonders about his switch-up. Yanwu then tells Hanbit that he isn't an employee, but they should partner up as co-CEOs. Hanbit tells him to forget about the co-CEO, and Yanwu should tell him whatever it is, and he'll help. Hanbit notes that the reason he's playing the game is because of Yanwu, and it's also his last chance to reach Erfurt. He wonders what will happen if he clears the game and finds Erfurt. Still on the matter, he wonders what exactly was the reason he had to die over and over again. As they dig into their meal, Yanwu shows Hanbit that he's got a lot of texts, so he calls it the celebrity lifestyle. Suddenly, he sees a different message and he gets agitated, so he quickly places a call, and when the person doesn't pick up, Yeonwoo nearly loses his marbles. Hanbit asks him why he's acting that way, and he reminds him of the pioneer group they had seen the other day in the game, and how they are from a German corporation called Rasten. Currently, Yeonwoo has been informed that the Asvel quest rewards drop in grade on a first-come, first-served basis, so Rasten has declared they are monopolizing the quest. Not only that, but the slimes aren't visible in the bomb slime fields either. Now, the rumors are spreading that Hanbit had planned the case with Rasten beforehand, but Hanbit, who hears the news, is shocked, and he wonders what is going on. Meanwhile, in the game, a group of team players curses Rasten and Hanbit, calling them scammers and saying they can't be trusted. This is because of the situation where item grades drop after the highest quality has been taken. While one complains like a monkey, the logical one analyzes the situation, saying it won't be alright if the game just hands out unique grades to everyone. While she complains to her teammate about how the slimes have gotten invisible thanks to Rasten's tricks, she wants Hanbit to explain what's going on in the stream, because he must have seen the announcement. Back at the coffee shop, Hanbit asks Yeonwoo about how big Rasten Corporation is, so Yeonwoo breaks it down to him by explaining that the value of a corporation is determined by how many strong players they hold. He says Rasten's Ranger, the bow wielder, has a combat power of 9,000, and even though they're on the weaker side for a ranker, they are considered one nevertheless. Hanbit thinks about it and notes that there's a way to solve it, but he tells Yeonwoo to start the stream later than usual because he has something to look into. Later that night, Hanbit goes through the guidebook and notes that he has found what he's looking for. Without wasting time, he heads into the game to check it out and goes straight to the cave's location, noting that it's just as he remembered. There, he confirms that the bomb slimes are gathered there, and as he carefully walks past them, he notes that there's only one reason why they gather in one place. And right up ahead, he sees the Bomb Slime King. The Bomb Slime King has a trait where it draws in normal units to absorb them and grow in size, but the unit it usually draws in isn't that high compared to the current one, so Hanbit believes there is another reason. He looks right ahead and spots a monster attractant artifact and sees that it has Rasten written on it. The device is a single-use item that can be obtained from a dungeon in the north, which means that Rasten must have installed the attractant in the cage where the Bomb Slime King resides. And such a mess happened because the creature's traits and the item's effects overlapped. Realizing their ploy, Hanbit fires a fireball at the Slime Bomb King, disintegrating it without giving it a chance to explode. He is immediately rewarded with a large amount of experience points, and his level increases by 4. For suppressing an elite monster, Hanbit earns the Recorder of the Sage title, which, upon activation, significantly increases his skill proficiency. Seeing the number of increments and levels he got just from defeating the king, Hanbit wonders how many of the slime bombs must have fused with the king, since Hanbit had recorded the bomb slime situation which showed how Rasten was behind it. He had Yeonwoo post the video anonymously, which he had cut out the part where he used his fireball on the community group, and doing so allowed the players and viewers to flame the German company. All this was thanks to the info he got from the guidebook on Yentrober, an NPC miner who personally dug out the cave where the Bomb Slime King was, and he became sad after the Bomb Slime King took over his cave. From the information he had on the ground, Hanbit could easily pinpoint the king's location. What he had considered strange was the fact that Yentrober was in the guidebook, but there was no information about the cave. Hanbit feels uneasy as he notes that the guidebook, which was normal for it not to contain everything, not only left some key parts out but also has a level of ambiguous accuracy and parts that are different from the truth. This makes him wonder if Adventurer A, the person who wrote it, intentionally left some cogs. Now he wonders who Adventurer A's true identity is. Later, he rendezvous with Yeonwoo, who talks about how proficiency is the main reason why everyone avoids magic, because one has to build the skill, which is extremely hard to do. Most people give up on it. What shocks Yeonwoo is when Hanbit reveals he has acquired a 100% proficiency, so he whines about it since it is an impossible feat to pull off in a day. He then clings to Hanbit, asking him to show him for him to see. Hanbit tells him the proficiency is the lowest rank one in the first place, but Yeonwoo says what Hanbit is downplaying is hard as hell, and to learn any magic takes at least a month. Yeonwoo clings to him till Hanbit has no choice but to show him, and when he does, Yeonwoo falls on his knees as he copes hard, believing it's a bug. There, Hanbit tells him not to reveal the proficiency to the stream because he wants to show him something interesting to the villains. Shortly afterwards, Yeonwoo starts the livestream and informs the chat that they aren't connected to Rasten and they'll prove it soon. First, he tells them to watch as Hanbit makes some findings before heading to find Baldur's master. At Asvel's shop, Hanbit asks to confirm if Leah has run off again, and after getting a positive response, he tells Asvel that Leah is in her rebellious phase, and it won't be long before they can all live together again. Hearing him wish her family well makes Asvel happy, so she thanks Hanbit before asking him why he showed up. There, Hanbit reveals that he has come to learn more magic, and he asks if it's okay. The chat waves him off, believing it'll be impossible. But then Asvel shocks them by agreeing to it, and this makes them wonder how he'll get to learn a new spell since he'll need to be proficient. She hands him a second book, and he gets a quest where he's to learn the magic, and if he successfully pulls it off, he'll not only get a new flame spell, called Flame Burst of the hero rank, but he'll also get 10,000 gold coins with an experience points of 3,000. Once the chat sees it's a hero rank spell, they look down on it, forgetting that it was once an impossible rank to attain. He sees the Rastin group curiously waiting outside, so he absorbs the book and earns the rewards with the hero rank spell, leveling up to be unique once more. Yeonwoo then announces, informing everyone that Hanbit has learned the new magic skill while ranking up. Asvel then tells him that if he ever gets stuck, he will find a way if he goes to the magic research lab in Ifrit City. With that, he thanks her and walks outside, but upon getting there, he sees Rastin's men anxiously waiting outside, so he walks past them, and while passing the ranger, Hanbit teases him by asking if something has happened and the ranger should ease up his expression. Right after, they collect the magic books from Asvel, and Hanbit notes that Rastin's corporation is greedy. Curious, Yeonwoo asks Hanbit what he meant when he said he wanted to show him something earlier, so Hanbit replies with a question, asking Yeonwoo for the difference between him and the Rastin members. In that instance, the men count to 3 and flip the books open, hoping to gain the second flame skill. But in that instant, their books catch fire. They struggle to put it out and they fail at it, and this pisses off Asvel, who watches them burn her precious books and fill the house with smoke, so she chases them out. Just then, Yeonwoo realizes why. But the viewers who haven't been briefed ask him why. Suddenly, one of Rastin's men informs the others that the quest has changed, and when they see it, the book rank lowers, and after the ranger confirms that no one in his team learned the spell, he walks straight to Hanbit, saying they should have a little chat. Hanbit asks him what he wants to talk about, and the ranger demands to know why Hanbit was the only one who got the Flame Burst skill, but Hanbit mocks him by asking him the same question before saying he should figure it out since he's a veteran. The ranger gets pissed, and the chat finds it funny since they've been the ones always preventing people from gaining skills. Still, he informs Hanbit about how all of his 50 men, including him, failed to get the skill, and even worse, the grade got reduced, so he says it isn't a coincidence that Hanbit must have learned the skill properly. Hanbit starts by hitting the nail on the head. He tells the ranger that it's because of his team that many other innocent players lost their chance to even try for a hero grade. Also, he never said it was a coincidence. This pisses off the ranger as Hanbit continues by explaining how proficiency is the basis of ranking up. He asks the ranger if they even max out their proficiency before getting the magic book. The ranger looks confused, so Hanbit reveals that they need to raise their fireball proficiency to move on to the next step, and on hearing this, the ranger tells him that it should be that way for everyone, so he wants to know how Hanbit got the reward without maxing his proficiency. That's when Hanbit drops the bomb on them by revealing that he has maxed out. This shocks not only the chat, but also the ranger, who looks like a confused bird. To prove what he's saying, Hanbit then decides he'll pull up his stats and show them, and Yeonwoo commends him. Normally, Hanbit didn't want to go this way, but since the ranger asked for it, there's no point hiding it, so he disses the ranger before pulling out his stats, revealing he's proficient in all skills. The chat immediately goes wild, and some, just like the ranger, conclude he has hacked the game. Ranger immediately says he'll report him, and Hanbit gives him the leeway, saying he has nothing to hide, unlike them. Provoked after being played and roasted, Ranger storms off while Hanbit tells him to try playing the game honestly rather than controlling the zone. Ranger goes right back into the shop and orders his men to continue talking to Asvel so they don't miss an opportunity, and this pisses her off. Hanbit notes that they can try for 100 days, but the result will still be the same. He feels bad for Asvel, as she'll have to handle the group. As he heads back, he recalls Asvel being the kind of master who wants her students to humbly build their skills without getting greedy, and he remembers how she literally beat the skill into him. Hanbit wonders if seeing many people die trying to get ahead of themselves was the reason she hammered the basic magic spell into him during his cycles, and one time when he tried being greedy, she kicked him out, warning him not to show up ever again. Her personality and principles didn't change even with the game interfering, and this is why the more Rastin complains at her door, the more her affinity for them lowers, as it did for him. Yeonwoo, who feels exhausted watching Rastin, tells Hanbit that he was harsh when dealing with the group, because based on the way he interacted earlier, Rastin's stands might get them flamed. Without a care in the world, Hanbit tells Yeonwoo to handle them, and he gets confused, saying he wasn't the one antagonizing them, but then he fails to realize that he's the owner of the account, so Yeonwoo reminds him and makes fun of him. The viewers donate to the stream and thank Hanbit for giving them the chance to not only farm for slime bombs, but to work hard on their proficiency. As Hanbit walks back, he tells Yeonwoo that they'll stop by the village shop, and Yeonwoo wonders when they'll look for Baldur's master, but Hanbit tells him that there's something he wants to prepare before that. Shortly afterwards, when they get to town, Hanbit sees how crowded the place is and he wonders why, so Yeonwoo, who spots the center of attraction, informs Hanbit about her, Rafina, a ranker and one of the few elementalists. The chat goes bonkers after seeing her, and as they fight for whose wifey she is, Hanbit inquires about why there are few elementalists, so Yanwu informs him that it's because only those chosen by spirits can use them. Meanwhile, the chat talks about how not only meeting a spirit is a hurdle, but also communing with them to control them. It's a very rare occurrence, and spirit skills are insanely overpowered. It sounds different from how Hanbit remembers things, and Yanwu informs him that Rafina's spirit skills are stuck at rank 3, and this is mostly because the elementalist title is closer to an honorary one, since it isn't a path that one can pick as their main. The viewers and everyone gathered around her want her to show them her spirits, and from the chat, Hanbit learns that she has 6th rank magic. Yanwu asks Hanbit, who tells him that he's interested in spirits because it's great to have the spirit's power. As they watch Rafina summon spirits, Yanwu speaks of how spirit arts are different from magic and how it requires innate talent despite being a game. While everyone is impressed to see her art, Hanbit learns that Rafina has the knack for this skill, and she communicated with both water and wind spirits in just 6 months. There, Hanbit learns that Rafina has been stuck in the 3rd rank for 10 months, and it might be an issue that proficiency can't solve. As they watch her walk off after performing for the crowd, Hanbit asks Yanwu if Rafina is the #1 elementalist, but then Yanwu says that the top-tier vanguards are extremely secretive with their information. Since the game was built for the first person to clear it to have ownership rights, it's quite logical for people to keep their abilities hidden. After all, information is power. Hanbit stares at Rafina and notes that he can't help but feel a strange sense of kinship with someone who has communed with spirits. After she leaves, he tells the viewers to prepare for the next quest, and Yanwu curiously asks him what he wants to get, but Hanbit tells him he'll see when they get there. After visiting the shop, Yanwu looks disappointed because Hanbit simply bought a lot of random junk. They then walk for some time with Hanbit leading them to where the wind gathers. Upon reaching a cliff, Hanbit says it looks like an entrance, but Yanwu disagrees with him, saying it looks like an entrance to the afterlife. Suddenly, Hanbit gets a quest which is for him to not only find Baldur's Swordmaster but also gain his recognition, because doing that might earn him a very special technique. While the chat is scared of the cliff, Hanbit wonders how to get down, so the viewers issue a commission challenge, daring them to try bungee jumping without a cord. Yanwu calmly tells them how dangerous it is and tells Hanbit they don't have to do the mission. The viewers keep donating, and when Yanwu sees that Hanbit isn't saying anything, he looks up at him and sees him grinning like a devil. Already sensing what's next, Yanwu dreads for his life, and Hanbit grabs him and leaps without giving Yanwu enough time to finish his line. As they descend the cliff, the chat notes that Hanbit has jewels of steel. They descend for a long time, and Yanwu passes out midway through the journey. Hanbit then sees a magic circle, and they land safely. Yanwu wakes up and thanks his stars he isn't dead, and Hanbit informs him that they've completed the mission. Someone suddenly donates and informs them that about 300 stalkers have taken their lives after witnessing Hanbit's test of courage. Meanwhile, the reason Hanbit and Yanwu are alive is solely thanks to Baldur's napkin, so he plans to reveal it when the Rastan guys fall about 10,000 more times. Yanwu, who spots something, calls Hanbit's attention, and when they look ahead, they see a figure at the top of the rocks, and Hanbit tells Yanwu that the person is Baldur's master. Yanwu, upon confirming that the quest will be over as soon as they get to the Wind Swordsman, marvels at the discovery and says they should get on with it. Hanbit, on the other hand, asks him if he wants to go first and tells him it's quite a spectacle from the inside, so Yanwu should truly capture it himself. Yanwu feels emotional for Hanbit's kindness and calls him a true streamer, but Hanbit hurries him over. Yanwu innocently walks down the path, but just then a spear comes out of the wall and grazes his cheek. The chat freaks out, and some viewers wonder if Hanbit is the devil for setting Yanwu up. Scared and offended, Yanwu yells at Hanbit, saying he did it on purpose. But Hanbit says it doesn't matter. After all, he didn't die. The chat enjoys the comedy going on between them, but when they watch Hanbit pull out an arrow and aim it close to the spear, they tell Yanwu, who is scared, to apologize. Hanbit shoots more arrows in a similar pattern along the walls, before instructing Yanwu to follow him. Clueless, Yanwu asks him what the arrows are for, so Hanbit explains that he felt there were more traps, which was why he fired them ahead of time. Suddenly the area starts vibrating, and as they wonder what's going on, a huge boulder rolls down their path. Scared to bits, Yanwu screams at Hanbit, informing him about it, saying there's nowhere for them to dodge, but Hanbit shocks him by saying there's no need. He gathers his flame magic and blasts the rock aside with it. Upon seeing that Hanbit didn't shatter the rock to bits with flame burst, the viewers wonder if the spell was that weak, but then they conclude that Hanbit controlled his power. Some of them also discuss how Rastan folks are still falling to their doom, and this makes Hanbit happy. He then urges Yanwu to proceed with him, and a few moments later tons of arrows fly their way. Quickly, Hanbit shoots down most of the arrows, and the chat is impressed with his skill. Unfortunately, he runs out of arrows, so he takes out his sword while instructing Yanwu to keep an eye on their surroundings. Yanwu then takes over the commentary, informing them that Hanbit is deflecting the arrows with his sword. They immediately treat him like a toddler who reacts to what everyone can see. The duo continues in that manner, brute forcing their way through the booby traps, but when they almost reach the safe area, Hanbit yells at Yanwoo to stop, and as soon as he listens, spears shoot out from the ground, inches away from them. Hanbit then warns Yanwoo not to let his guard down, and this surprises the latter, who wonders how Hanbit knows when to dodge. There, Hanbit explains that it's not a matter of knowing, but the gut feeling he's cooked. In reality, Hanbit has been acting on muscle memory, which was etched into his soul after regressing 55 times. Suddenly, a boulder drops from above, but Hanbit shatters it with his flame. Although a small rock hits Yanwoo on the head, he takes the damage like a man. Once Hanbit informs them that their journey is a little further, Yanwoo gets impatient, and he asks how much further. But then, after a few steps, Hanbit tells him they are there. Yanwoo refuses to believe him, since that has been the coping mechanism Hanbit has used throughout to get him going. But when Hanbit tells him to look up, he sees the Windsword's master right ahead. Excited, he asks Hanbit if they can get the skill, but then Baldur's master tells them to go back. The chat comments wonder if it's a joke after all the effort, and just like them, Yanwoo cries out to Hanbit, wondering if they went through all that stress for nothing.